I got the shortest one. So here I am. Hi, I'm Minnie Rogers. I am a multimedia artist, and I've been doing art professionally for a few years. But today I'm basically going back to the basics and teaching you guys what I first learned when I was sculpting, which is little buddies. So yeah, no, I would sit down, my Nima, we were probably like 3 or 4, and you know polymer clay? She handed us all of us grandkids it, and she was like, okay, here's the simplest way to make little creatures. And she gave us all of these little, and some of them looked a little wrangled. And I couldn't find any of mine. I did find one of my brother's old ones. So he had to have been like 5 or 7. He told me it wasn't a lizard. It kind of looks like a lizard. So I don't know. His name is Zero. I do remember that. But yeah. And
Was it one?
huh?
Was it the one after 0?
No, that would have been great. No, he was just obsessed with the number 0 and all things mischievous and spooky. But so because when I work, I make a lot of things that are kind of time consuming and like articulate. So like I make things like this, which you have to get the timing right. Same thing with faces out of porcelain or slip casting and a lot of pattern work. And I get frustrated so quickly because with any of these things, whether it be timing or with just how meticulous it is, it just can get tedious, and I forget how much I like clay. I just get frustrated and in my feels. And so when that happens, I stop and I make little buddies. And I make a lot of them. Every time I go into the studio, I make a little buddy. And sometimes they do break, but that's not the point of them. Sometimes I get to fire them. But the point of them is to just remember that clay is fun and it's something that we can play in and just participate in just an act of joy, even if not everything's got to be super serious, and that's okay. But so I will walk you through like step by step. I'm not going to go all the way through because we're doing 10 minutes, which I need you to remind me when I'm getting there. So I am going to show you on a piece of clay way bigger than what I normally use. And this is scrap clay. So I was making a giant face today. This is leftover clay from that. To kind of show this is not something you need a bunch of extra clay or a bunch of extra time. This should be at most a 15-minute activity to just get you in the mode, kind of like sketching before you paint, just to help your brain remember all these little things as well as having fun. Usually at most I use about this size, about a cookie dough ball size amount of clay. But just for visual aspect, I will be showing you this. So if we follow along, so I did run out of handouts, and for that I'm sorry. But yeah, these are our wonderful steps. But yeah, so that is for the little bear, which I will pass this around during my next 10 minutes of random little guys, but that's this little bear. He's really tiny, and he has little paw prints, but I love him, and he's my little guy. Because what I'll do is I'll make this little guy, and while he's greenware, I'll put him in the corner of my thing, and then I can just work, and he's just there encouraging me as I go, which is always fun. And sometimes I give them names, sometimes they don't get names till later. So usually start with a little chunk of clay, like I said, usually much smaller or even smaller than this, just whatever I have around. And what I'll do is I flip it over, so hold it in the palm of your hand and do an X. When I say this is the exact way, I learned when I was an itty bitty, this is the exact way. So I usually go about a third way down. So that way, this is what you're starting to form the legs. This is for a 4-legged creature. You don't have to do 4 legs. You can do less. Like I have this little owl who is literally one piece of clay that I just carved into and made a little guy out of. It's your heart desire, my dude. But so what you do is, and after you get those 4 scores, you start to pinch and pinch. Don't overcomplicate things. Just simple shapes. I know that I sometimes want to jump straight into the detail because that's the fun part. But sometimes it's good just to be like, okay, what are the simple shapes of this creature? Like that bear, that's not what a bear actually looks like, but he's a cute little bear. And so we get our little legs, and so we kind of pinch them. Now they're almost legs. So now what we're gonna do is, now that we have a blob creature of 4 legs, we're going to slowly start, well, this guy, since we're making a bear, he will have a tail. And one thing that I did forget to say at the beginning that is important, begin with the end in mind, okay? Which means when I lifted up this piece of clay, I looked at it and I was like, this clay, it's going to be a bear. So I'm going to make this a bear. And I'm not gonna, and if something happens, I can pivot. But I'm gonna start with an idea in my brain. Sometimes pivoting is necessary. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does ease the pressure when you begin with something in your head already. So if that means sketching it out, and this goes for any piece you're making. If it means sketching it out, that means making a maquette, so like a little thing first, that's okay. But I know that I want him to be a bear. So I'm gonna start pinching and pulling. So from this one chunk of clay, like I said, if I have this, I'll use this. Sometimes I'll use a needle tool. I have made stuff just using my fingernails and a pencil, and that is okay. Just use whatever you have on hand. And so then I'm gonna start pushing and pulling, trying not to over manipulate those legs, and kind of start chunking out where the head would be. Mine doesn't really look like a bear right now, and that's okay, because we're just doing the simplest form. We're going simple, and then each step we're adding more detail and more detail and more detail. And with that, once again, this is something to kind of help take a breath. You're just playing around, and that's okay. And if you make something you really like, that's awesome, and you get to keep it. And if not, you got an awesome thing you can put in Reclaim, and that's great. Or something you can test glazes with, because with little guys, you have so many indents and different like swoops and stuff, and you can see what clay looks like with different glazing. So there's always something you can get out of it, even if it doesn't go the way we want. And so then I've started to make the head. Do you want me to finish this guy and do another one? Okay. Don't mind me looking to Gargi. I don't know anything, and she's my emotional support human. Hey, if you need one, she's amazing at it. Just pillar of strength over there. And so once again, so I've kind of pinched and pulled and pulled. And so a lot of these techniques that you use, these finer motor skills, you can use in other things, even like such as sculptures, but also pinch pots and other things of sorts. So now I'm starting to squish out where that snap would be. So I'm like, okay, I have the head. Now I want it to have a little nose, a little snout. But now I have this extra piece that's not really necessary. So what we're gonna do is, if we're gonna use a one tool, let's say I only have one tool. I've already used this tool, so this is my one tool. I'm just gonna do a little bloop, little cut down the middle, and pinch, pinch. This is the one time where having nails in clay is actually really useful. That usually I keep one thumbnail long so I can do these little creatures. Like all the other ones will be super short, and then one just slightly longer so I can be able to cut and slice and stuff and add little indents. And so now he's starting to kind of look like a bear. Yes. He's starting to get there. But I want him to have like more of a fun shape. So we're gonna point his feet. He's gonna have little feetsies. And so at this point, we're kind of on step 6. We're starting to add more details, more flavor, more character. Should this bear have a name?
Yes.
Yes, what should his name be? Any suggestions?
Yosemite.
Yosemite the bear. Yes. They call him Mitty for short. And we love Mitty. Mostly because I'm really horrible at pronouncing things, and I don't know if I could say Yosemite a bunch of times. Hey, know your strengths. Mine is not speaking. We all know. And so once again, kind of pinching and pulling, and I'm gonna get the same tool. And I wanna make his ears kind of a little bit different. So I'm just gonna put it inside and kind of drag down. And once again, with one tool, we're able to do a lot of different things. And so now his little ears have little indents of where his eyes would go. And then I am gonna give him bigger eyes because this is the tool I chose. And so this is what I get. And so I'm just gonna kind of twist it. And then all of a sudden we have two little eyes where he can see the world, and he's gonna travel and see all of our work and encourage us as we go. And he's got a little nose. And so there's little Mitty. And so he's just gonna now sit in this corner, and he's gonna be able to just sit there and remind you that you can accomplish things even if it's small, and have fun while you work. And just know that, hey, today, even if every pot I throw fails, even if everything I try to put together, slip and score, falls apart, that's okay. I made a little buddy, and he was there to encourage me as I went. And so, like, take that in, that you still can create things even if you mess all of your work up in one day, and you're just like, oh my goodness, Clay just hates me. We're not friends anymore. I can't stand it. You're just like, wait a minute, but I have all these little guys that have shown me that I can do it, and I am capable, and all these finer skills I can use in creating, I use in big pieces and in finer skills. But yeah, a little bit.
Okay, before we move on, I think there's something very interesting about this is, I read it in one of the books, which is Creative and Mental Growth, which was about, like, especially there was a chapter where they were talking about kids and how they themselves have a way to do things. So how you were using the one blob and you were not attaching things. So they usually say that inherently, each one of us, when we are growing up, when we don't know anything about any way of doing things, we inherently have a way to work with when given clay. So some of us, from within ourselves, just have a blob and just like pull out things from that blob. And there are some of us who are in our like mental capacity will
now I want to
attach.
cast everyone
But I think we are all corrupted now.
Yeah, but like,
Because in general, for so many years, we have been going through that, right? There are different people like, oh, you know, this is the only way. But I have seen very few people do this. Because usually it's like, oh, this is one piece, the second piece, attach it. But very few people I have observed are still doing that.
I think it was actually
It's
really
interesting.
wise of my Mima to teach me to work with one clump, because then I didn't have to deal with it falling apart at like 3 or 5
That's
and then
true.
like crying.
That's
Why did it break?
That's true.
Instead, she's like, nah, just one piece, work from that, you're good. But like you can see, my brother, he adds pieces.
Yes.
All these pieces are added together. That's how his brain works. And oh my goodness, that is how his brain works. That's kind of scary. And while I do tend to, with these, because I want it to be quick and something I can do all in one go, I work from one piece. It also helps push me to kind of learn how I can push and pull a piece to get what I want from it.
Yeah.
But no, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's gonna haunt me. Thank you. And I'm just like looking at every ceramicist, how do your brain work?
It's also good for consistency as well.
Mhm.
If we have the same ball player.
Yeah, and that's another reason why. And like I said, some of these on the transit here broke. Like these 2 little dinosaurs, they were hugging. I was anxious for today, so I made little dinosaurs. But like other things like this guy was it was something I was fiddling around with. Now I'm making giant, one of these little heads. Like when I say giant, it's like
This big.
yay big. But it started out because I had a small piece of clay at the beginning of the day, and I just fiddled around with it. And it was just one little thing that I fiddled around with. Like sometimes the things that the flowers, like as on our journey, we're like, oh, flowers, and we stop, we pick up all the flowers. Sometimes those are the things we can use later. And so I don't know, I love little buddies.
Okay, hi, I'm Gargi. My background, I did architecture, never practiced it. But somehow it shows in my work. It's just there. I just can't get out of me. Later, I did my master's in ceramic and glass design. But now I am an artist. I don't think I can do a lot of planning, which you will see when I'm showing that work. Like it just changes every time. Like every step, it just changes. So last year we had our demo, and at that time I was obsessed with the form, which was springs. Again, a little more structure. Like I was obsessed with a lot of springs, and that's what I showed. And I was in the phase where I didn't know what to do with the springs. So that's when I had a lot of bisque pieces and a lot of like spring forms. And I was like, I don't know, I was just like making them. So I took a workshop with Shikha Joshi, where she works with wild soils, and that's how she created the glaze effect on her functional pieces. And that opened up a huge possibility for me how to use slips in my work. And suddenly in that workshop, after that 2 hour of online workshop, I could see my springs as metal springs. So I could see that, oh, okay, now I can see these as something which is rotted, decayed, and I want to just make metal springs. So that's how it started. Okay, so another reason why I felt this was so true, because my phone was filled with these images. This is at DSE, this is like, if everywhere I went, I was just like gravitating towards these rust textures and seeing how, and the one on the extreme right, the railing, twisty, that's Sushma's home. And wherever I was going, I was like, oh, this is such an interesting form. And again, it's somewhere related to architecture. But I was just gravitating towards these. So I could see where all of this was coming from because it was all there in my phone already. So the question was where to start, because I also didn't have, like, I was at Dougherty, but I didn't have access to, like, I was not making my own glazes. So I just had already mixed glazes. I knew that, oh, there are certain slips, clay body slips, which give certain texture, but I didn't know what to do. So I was actually looking for a texture which was somewhere between, if it's a red rusted piece, like one on the bottom with the T, whatever. It was like, oh, it might have had a iron-based glaze in it, but it also has an effect of a slip, clay body slip, because it's very rough. So I was like, oh, okay, so I have clay slip, I have a mixed glaze, why not just mix them and see what happens? So, okay, marry them and see what I can do with them. So I started doing some tests, if you can see. So I had, okay, I don't know if you can read it, but it's like there was a red glaze, Bailey's Red at Dougherty, and I had 266 standard clays, which I was already using as a slip. So it was not just about the texture, it was also because all the springs were already bisqued. So I just could not put just the clay slip because it will not attach. So I was like, oh, let's just like mix a glaze. It'll have some flux in it, so it'll melt and it'll attach to the body. At the same time, it'll have the texture and the color and the oxide which is there in the glaze. So let's just try and do. So this is how I started. This was one of my really early tests. So I started mixing wet to wet. So I had the clay slip, which was almost like this consistency, if you can see, like a slip which you use to attach things, and I had the glaze, which is like the liquid glaze. So I used to take 1 spoon of the glaze, 1 spoon of the slip, and that was 1:1. So that's how it started. So I started with 1:1.5, 1:0.5, 1:1, 1:1.5, 1:2. That's how I kept making the textures. And I was like, oh, this kind of looked like rust. And I was like, oh, okay, this works, this worked. And this was the first experiment I did. So, okay, with that, 2 of them are internet images. So the center one is what I saw in one of the museums. And I also started looking at not just on mixing them, but also to see how I can get that depth of different colors that you get when metal rusts, that how I can add these layers to it. So a range of colors, and how I can do that. I can do that with different glazes. So I started taking a lot of different clay bodies, making them into slips. Then a lot of different, like a yellow glaze, a red glaze, a purple one, a green one, and then mixing them together, and that worked. So this was the colors. What was the second one? Okay. So now I'm just going to show you how I do it. It's nothing, but
Can we
yes.
touch the bowl that you?
Yeah, please. Yeah. You can have all of them, so it's different.
We need.
Actually, you can just take these also if you want. just grab them. Yeah. Okay, so for now, because all my slip, also when, okay, I don't have any now. Okay, I have this. So when I have like all the proportions and I like a certain one for a certain form that I want to apply on, I usually make a bigger batch of that one. And at the end, because it's all like the standard 266 clay slip, everything looks the same. Like all of my mixtures are this color because it's so hard for me to make sure. So I'm carrying a different glaze today so that there is at least some color and you can see how that works. So I have a glaze.
Wait, you mix that glaze too?
No, that's a Dougherty's. This is Dougherty's glaze.
Okay.
Which glaze is it?
This is Aramont. It's no longer there. Yeah. Okay. So also because I'm not going to I'm not selling these. So for me this works. Like it just works. So this is 1 spoon of the slip.
Old school spoon.
Yes.
My kind of spoon. Baking.
Yes, it's baking. I think it's how I cook. Like, oh, just add this, just add that. And I will have the glaze.
Just a little bit.
For me, this is 1 spoon. So I'm adding a spoon. This one? This will be a green blue.
Green blue is like glossy, not glossy.
Matte. This is matte. But mostly all the matteness usually just comes from this. I'll also talk about how I like, because I'm not firing them at cone 6, like so that it has that crunchy thing, and when you touch it, it also feels like the rust and it's not like glossy.
So wait, you're not firing it at cone 6. What cone are you firing it at?
I'll tell you in some time. I'll tell you in some time.
Okay, good.
Yes, I'll come to that. I'll come to
I don't
that.
know if I do that in the chance for later.
Okay, so mix. So this is 1:1 for me because it's 1 spoon of this and 1 spoon of this. This is how I do it. Then now when I have these mixtures and when I know that, oh, I'm looking for maybe for Baileys, I use 1:1.5, for example. Now I have mixed that. I have that thing, but how to apply it so that it does give that effect of rust and it has that texture which is a little like thicker. So for example, this is, so I can brush it, but it's so flat. I have also tried using spraying the glazes, but at the end when it's fired, it just like becomes a flat surface, especially because I have a lot of glaze in them. It does not have that texture. So this is also something which I learned in the workshop with Shikha. She was using like these small sponge pieces, which are just like these torn pieces. And I was just talking to her recently. I'm like, you know what, I'm using this. She's like, oh, I'm no longer using them. And I'm like, oh, give me all the crumbs. Okay, so if the same thing, if I just like make it this way, it has that texture. And if I layer different kinds of the slip plus glazes, which I usually call them, and layer them with different things, it gives that texture really better as compared to, I sometimes actually just use my finger. That also is really good, like that also works sometimes. Depends on what kind of texture I'm looking for. So in application, but in things which are like very tiny and my hand can't, like a sponge can't reach, of course I use a brush to like fill those, but usually if you see, these are the 3 different ways and I usually use this to apply it. So once I have the application, in place. Maybe we can do that later. Okay, we'll come to this part later. Okay.
I want to talk about my process. It's a little bit different. I usually start from a little walking around. If I have these frustration periods, I go outside, I walk. I prefer to walk in the parks and in the areas where I can find plants and, I don't know, different rocks, whatever it comes there. I collect lots of things. I have a whole space in my apartment that covered with everything that I brought home. And my inspiration is also comes from different books. Today I brought a couple of books with the plants, and I want us to work together because it's gonna be like some sort of, not experiment, but free flow. My work is mixed with it's called biomorphic design. It's shapes of the nature. So today I want to show how I made this piece or something similar. So I don't know how to make it. I want you to choose a form which I would draw later, and then I will create a pattern. And then I will cut it from the clay and put it together. And by the end, I probably will have something close to vessel or seed pod. Yeah. So if you, I don't know how to make it.
Do you want to see the pole?
Maybe. I don't know. I have a lot of.
Ooh, an
Just like
Wild.
hold it up and people can clap and say which one they want.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
the clap. The clap meter. Oh, do we have a suggestion? There's what, a yucca? A yucca.
GACA. What is GACA? Oh, the red one. Oh, it's actually, this is what all my ideas came from, because I was walking around and during summer we have it all over. Every single parking is covered with these plants. And my very first vessel was very close to it. And after that, I started some sort of experiment with different shapes. Yucca, okay, I have it. Something close to probably this one. I sketch a lot. If you wanna, I don't know, if you wanna see, I can also. Okay, so if it's yucca.
Question.
Yes.
Do you think your history in fashion has made you more likely to use design slab stuff and pattern making?
Yes. I think it's related to design because it's not fully creative process that I go from I don't know where. It's always first I do research. I do create some sort of illustrations, sketches. I grab some materials, I look through different artwork, and yes, I think, yeah, this is how we learn during our years in institute. We first started, we research for, I don't know, for a month first and putting together anything. So probably, okay, this is gonna be a shape. I'm gonna use a box. I try to use everything that I have around. I usually, I don't know about you, but I have these piles of everything. Paper that I'm gonna use later, boxes that I'm gonna use later, and different other materials. So I'm gonna draw a shape. I'm trying to do big, because I tend to do bigger stuff than smaller.
How long have you been doing plant-based things?
So I think it started in the summer of 2024. Yeah.
Any reason why?
So I think I was always very creative since I was a kid. But then when I immigrated to United States, things went different way because it was completely new country. I'm originally from Belarus. It's Eastern Europe, if someone knows where is it. It's a small country in the middle of Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania, Eastern European. And when I moved to United States, I started to work in different fields. I changed so many jobs, you can even imagine. But when I moved to Texas, I don't know, I realized I need to go back to a creative self. And since the end of 2022, I started to look into different mediums. And I came to the Dougherty Art Center for the classes. It was at the beginning of 2023 when I started to take classes with Sarah, with Ashley, with another instructor who is not here. Yeah, and I don't know, I'm here now. So I have this shape. Now it's very flat. I probably need 2 of these to create just one segment, and it's gonna be, I think it's 5 segments. I don't have these planned with me, but I have, I think, a lot of photos of it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut one. And I think we need something in between because if I'm gonna put these 2 together, it's not gonna work. So I need something in between to create the shape. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna draw again.
Is the shape the same?
No.
Why not?
Because it needs to be longer, because it's not gonna start directly from here. It usually goes somewhere. If I want to create a bigger volume of the piece, it depends what I want to do. I can do something, I can put 2 pieces together and then it's gonna be like that. I can add more here. I can play with it. So now I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna open it up. So it's longer.
Do you think you are usually so fast in making things?
No.
You are. So every time it's been few months and like there are like 5 or 6 shelves, just which is so fast. Like it's so. Do you think you are fast because you also plan things?
I plan things and then I plan things.
Yes.
I really plan things because like this Monday, I came to the studio. My last 2 weeks was complete frustration. Every piece that I done went wrong. Like every single piece, I had cracks. Like pieces don't feel in it. Like they wasn't working. They are not working together. a glaze is wrong, something is wrong.
But how big are your pieces?
Yes.
Show them how big your pieces are.
Yeah.
It's like maybe a little bigger than.
And they
But-
and they stack.
Pieces this big each.
But I have bigger pieces. I have. I'm considering that now I'm somewhere in the middle, because when I was in the not in residency, when I was taking classes, it was always 8 by 8 by 8. And after I stopped taking classes, Anna can say, I continue to make these 8 by 8 by 8 somehow, and I don't know, I was like, what is going on? I'm not there anymore. Why I'm making these 8 by 8 by 8?
Muscle memory.
Yes. And I was like, I want to try more. I had lots of fails with bigger pieces because I don't have education in ceramics. So I was figuring out everything on my own, and I had lots of fails. Like pieces, I was spending like weeks building something, and then it just cracked and fell off, like apart. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? So it was a long journey, but it was fun. Now I kind of know what I can or what I cannot. But I believe we can do anything. Like we don't need to limit ourselves with something. Like just I do these. I do that.
Yeah.
Oh
that's
yes. Gargi said
It's huge.
It's huge.
No, and
it wasn't working, so I spent last week trying to put together these two pieces, because when I was about to fire, I checked if this piece goes inside of this piece and this goes inside of this one. Everything was really good, and I decided if everything working, why I should check the last one. And I didn't check it, and when I pull it out of the kiln, it didn't work. And this is the base, and I couldn't put it together for like 2 weeks. And only on Monday, I finished, and Gargi said, "You need to take a picture." Okay. And also it born because of the limitation of the kiln that I can fire. So I decided if I cannot build one piece as big as I want, what if I try to build them from different parts? So I have these pieces, and oh my, it's pretty
What?
wet.
yes. I'll try. There's
There's some
a,
sponges behind you there if you want to use them to support. What do you got?
As long as you keep it away from the edge, you should be good.
I'll try. I'll try. Okay.
Soundtrack.
Everything goes. Okay.
I love that. That makes me so happy. I love that means.
Now we're talking.
Okay.
And then she'll be nice.
I usually use everything that I can find at home. Like anything can work.
Creativity. Creativity. You don't need the exact tool to do that exact thing.
No. Okay. So I usually cut very precisely, but it reminds me of Minions. So. I can close it here, or I can add a piece and then I work on my. Oh, it's here. So now I know I need something longer, so I'm gonna tape it here and then I'm gonna cut another piece. As I said, I try to reuse materials all the time. And sometimes it looks ridiculous because I can cut from there. But yes, always. I use sleep, I use vinegar. I don't know why I use vinegar, but I always use vinegar. Yeah, because the clay is like wet. I don't need it now. And it usually takes me around 10 hours to make just one segment. But in Dougherty, we have all these fans coming around. And I'm just like,
It's
yeah, it's like our AC. Yeah, it's just
Do
super.
you usually wait for the clay to be a little like leather hard?
Yes,
Or,
yes. Because now it cannot hold the shape. So I'm gonna continue cut more pieces and then eventually I'm gonna put them together.
Hello, my name's Stefania. I am an artist. I focus mostly with insects, and I also tend to tie in my Mexican culture. And a lot of people question me, like, how do those two even collide? Like, insects, where'd you grab that from? And like, sure, Mexican culture makes sense. But when I, yeah, right. I did not start off thinking I was very creative. I didn't take an art class until my senior year of high school, which is where I started with ceramics. But just my entire childhood, being a child of immigrant parents, I was like very focused in school. I was like, you know, I need a 4.0, focus on this, don't need art for anything else really. But once I took that high school ceramics class, I was like, wow, this is actually really fun. And then in college, I eventually switched my major to ceramics, and I just didn't know what to make at first, but eventually I just started making bugs. And I was like, bugs? Why bugs? But I think it's because when I went to work with my dad, he was a landscaper, and I was outside in the grass, pulling the weeds, helping him out. I started messing with a lot of bugs out there too. There was like roly-polies and obviously like flies in the summer and everything. And I think that's where it comes from, my childhood wonder that I didn't really get to explore when I was younger, just because I was so focused in school, doing all sorts of things, just not really having the childhood I thought I wanted. But then when I started making my bugs, I was like, well, I mean, I can see how it relates. So I wanted to include some like patterns like Mexican talavera, and that's kind of what I start to like include in my insects here. I also have a mosaic up there, but I kind of have a better example on my Instagram. If you pull it up. Yeah, pull it up, and then pull up my grub, just so you can see. There's like patterns that I put on there, but I'm just sort of giving y'all like a little foundation of why bugs, why these patterns on my bugs. But I started out by making them out of like pinch pots, coils, very like basic foundation stuff you'd learn in a high school ceramics class, right? And then in college, the class was more so focused on make whatever you want. So I didn't necessarily explore too much out of those skills, but I did learn how to like elevate those skills of like pinch pots and coils, right? And typically you see pinch pots with being cups, coils like maybe a coil built vessel. This is a pinch pot and a coil. I do have like maybe, oh yeah, there we go.
Which way?
For the one I'm talking about, the middle moth. That is started out with a pinch pot. Like the body was a very large pinch pot, right? Yeah, and these pieces are huge. I did used to work rather large in college, maybe like, I think that's like 3 feet long or so. But yeah, so the body started out as a pinch pot, the head was a pinch pot, and it was just so easy to like cheat in terms of size with pinch pots and coils. And then if you go back, and then, sorry, to the main, yeah, and then the second row, second picture, the grub, that's what I mean by, yeah, that's what I mean by like these patterns, these talavera patterns. And I started to eventually combine them with like my own patterns. Like I like spirals, stars, and again, bringing back that like childhood wonder that I had as a kid. So I just feel like a lot of my art is recessing back to having fun. Exactly like, I kind of resonated with what Minnie was saying with her little buddies, and just starting out something small, something to keep you going. I used to make these little buggies, I'm trying to, right, that I would put in the kiln, like a little like good luck, you know, with that grub specifically. I had a little bug that I made, just good luck. So I think I try to relax, take off that pressure, even though this is, oh my God, ceramics is so stressful sometimes. But I try to take off that pressure by just making something I'm happy with. So I'm gonna start off with a pinch pot for the base. I like to do that to, again, like I said, like cheat the height, because starting off with a slab and then putting coils and coils and coils, that makes it really hard for me to get the angles that I want. And I was like, well, I mean, it kind of starts off looking like a cup, so why can't I just make a cup? So I just kind of start off like a little lump, right? Typical pinch pot, start in the center and work your way out. And I do tend to keep these pinch pots kind of thick at the bottom, at the start at least, because I mean, when I build up, I want all that weight to be equally supported with such a narrow base, especially for the shape of these bugs. And sometimes I make random bugs that don't exist, and sometimes I make bugs that do exist. This one, maybe you could find it in nature. They tend to look crazy the further you go out of the US, I think. But I think, yeah, right. Huh?
I said we got some weird ones.
We do.
At
Yeah.
least like, oh my goodness.
But the ones in like, where is it, like Peru or something? Anyways.
Oh yeah. The big ones with the big chicken.
Yeah, right? No, you're good. So again, I am kind of keeping this kind of thick at the bottom, and just going round and round, pinching motions. I do try to keep some foresight. Like with this one, I didn't think that I'd want to carve, but then in the end, I was like, no, I do want to carve. So I do tend to keep these kind of thick, maybe like 1/2 inch. I kind of guesstimate, I don't really measure. But I just try to think, look, if I'm gonna carve, I want it to be thicker than obviously the final thickness. I don't know. But I'm also, when I was working large like this, I had to keep those walls pretty thick as well. So I don't know, I guess I just kind of opt to work in thicker and then carving away now. So here I have kind of the base. I want that like flare to like start opening up. I'm thinking of an insect, maybe like a stag beetle. They're not so narrow at the bottom, a little bit wider. So I think I'm gonna try try to extend and flare out that pinch pot, and pulling out the sides here. And again, it is pretty heavy at the bottom. I'm gonna start removing that weight and pushing it up the walls just by, thumb in there, and then I kind of immediately push down almost 90 degrees, but then start pinching it up. Obviously not exactly 90 degrees because I still want it to have somewhat of a support there, but eventually I think it's gotten some height there. And I do try to get to a point where the bottom thickness is like carried up the walls, of course. Let's see here. Okay, so bottom's less thin. Feeling the thickness all along is very important. Obviously, I will have some like thicker spots, so I try to find those, thin them out a bit. But I'm not too focused on.
What layer are you using?
This is Cinco Rojo. Yeah. It's got some grog as well. I do prefer working with grog just because I do like to appreciate the texture, color of the clay and everything, which also goes back to what I'm trying to pay homage to with my culture that another part. I strayed away from my culture as a kid. That's why I'm trying to like get back into it. I just refuse to speak Spanish. Just typical rebellious things, I guess. I'm not too sure. But obviously I grew to love it as I got older, got into college, met more people like myself, and got to bond over that. All right. So I think I got wider, but that base, I'm gonna flip this over. Actually, I'm gonna pound it a little bit just to flatten it out. And it is soft, so I will keep working on this. And actually, I brought it back up. But pinch pots can be very versatile. I've seen some people, they get to like the stage maybe a bit more cleaned up, but they'll like fold the pinch pot in half. I've seen somebody make a bird out of it by like squeezing the head off, kind of like how Minnie was showing. Like you don't have to attach anything; you can just squeeze out from it, right? What else? You can put two pinch pots together, have a hollow sculpture form, or yeah, basically a foundation to a hollow sculpture. Change it up how you'd like. All right. So this is about kind of how thick I tend to keep my walls. Again, I am thinking about carving away. This one I didn't think too much ahead, so I didn't carve as much. But I want greater detail in this next one. I also want to work a little bit larger, just because this one didn't have grog and it shrank way more than I thought it would. So I was like, oh, I want to work smaller, but not this much smaller. So I am gonna try to go a little bit bigger, and I'll just roll out a coil really quick before I transition back to mini. But this is kind of how I work with my coils. They're not very round, obviously, but I prefer that because again, I was trying to cheat like height and everything, and I was like, well.
But you start them round.
I do start round. And
Do you table pound it or do you get a roller?
no, I table pound it. And I used to start with an extruder, but when I was at college, like nobody cleaned it. And I was very, very like I'm gonna clean it if I'm gonna use it. But I just got to a point where I was like, oh, never mind. I'm not even gonna try anymore. So with my coils, I just kind of grab a lump, pinch it out a little bit. And even though I don't keep my coils round, I always like remember like a little tip that one of my first professors taught me for like keeping that round coil, because I don't know if y'all have ever experienced it, but when you like roll a coil and it just like starts to get flat on one side, it's like really irritating, like, and then it starts to fold on itself. She just taught me to use my full hand and almost like reset, to like take it slow. So starting from fingertips to palm, and then I pick it up and restart. And that typically gets me a pretty round coil. I can go back and forth once I establish some length. But using the full hand really gets you a nice, consistent coil. And then at some point I do start to like go diagonal, speed it up, but like spread out that pressure that I'm putting on, and it gets me a really nice round coil. But even though I got that trick, I started thinking like, well, if I'm trying to build up faster, these small coils aren't going to get me anywhere. So I just started with these thicker ones, rolling a bit, and then of course that little like flatness does help me realize that I'm like basically working with small slabs here, right? So I do start to flatten up that coil, gives me some height already, and I am guessing about the height here. Or sorry, not the height, the thickness.
Is there a reason in particular you like to build big?
It was kind of required by my professor when I was in college, so it just immediately jumped into that. We had larger kilns.
Is there a particular reason of why she likes to build bigger instead of smaller? Like,
Yeah.
why is the preference?
And yeah, it was just my professor encouraging us, like, build bigger, why not? Like, you have all this space, take advantage of it. And I kind of took that to heart. I was like, yeah, I should take up space. So, and what I'm doing here, so I'm just kind of like, almost like collaring the piece. I wanted to get a little bit taller. So I just extended it a little bit with some height just by like squeezing, and here, I'll show it like this. Squeezing as I'm like turning. And it gives me some height, also keeps it pretty round in what I want. So again, that's kind of how I made my coil, and with how soft the clay is, Ashley asked me the other day, because I was practicing my demo with Ashley because I was so nervous, and I didn't have anything ready. But she asked me like, oh, do you always like slip and score? Because I usually slip and score no matter what. But honestly, like with this clay, how soft it is, sometimes I just like scratch it, throw some water on it with a sponge, and hope I'll be okay. And it's worked out for me. I haven't had anything explode. Nothing's come apart. So it works if you trust yourself enough to like, go with the flow. And what I'm doing with the coil, I do want it to start flaring outwards. So I want the coil to almost be halfway off the rim. So if you can, I know it's really soft. You can see the rim still peeking through right there. And up here it's also offset, and I'm just doing that so I can flare the base outwards. And I start smudging it. Right now it's too soft with my thumb, so I'm just gonna use this to scoop it up. And I can skip the whole coil to reinforce the two edges, especially with the offsetting. Or if you make the coil a little bit thicker or bigger than you want it to be, you can also just smudge that extra clay down to keep it reinforced. And then obviously I didn't make a full coil this time around, but I get to a point where it starts to get so wide that I can't even make a full coil to go around. And so I just start to cut these at an angle to make it easier for the next coil to adhere, and also to like take off thickness, because if you just add two coils the same thickness and adding them almost layered on top of each other, you're gonna get even more thickness, and I'm trying to avoid that. So I just cut them at an angle, some random angle, and it always messes me up in the head. I'm like, wait, what's the right angle to cut? It takes a second, but I will show that in a second here actually. So I did used to have a paddle to pat these down, but I left that when I moved here. I kind of left all my tools besides my little toolbox here. But I had a nice wooden paddle, made it super easy, just like in one length go along. And if I wanted to like extend this, I also kind of do a thing where I like hold the coil up and just pat it as I go down, and that elongates it almost as if you're like throwing a slab down. So I'm gonna cut that angle off again, I'm guessing, and I did it wrong. So it worked on the other one though. So we're gonna do that. This one's actually not too long, but I'll just demonstrate this side right here. So I just cut them at I don't know what degree angle that is. I'm not a math person, but they matched up. 45? Yeah, that was gonna be my guess, but I didn't want to be wrong. And again, I just kind of scratch it real quick, This one's really wet, but I'm still gonna add some water just for my own safety. I forgot to score the bottom. And then put that on there. And I do like to use this wooden rib that I have that I'm gonna pick up in a second to like pat things up and make them a little bit more consistent. So like this one right here, I just kind of like flap it around. It kind of solidifies that angle, or like shows me more of the angle that I'm gonna have. And I feel like a lot of being at the Dougherty for a couple months, a lot of students are like hand building and they get all these like little lumps and they're like, how do I make it more smooth? And I always have used a wooden rib. It does remove the clay, but it, like while you're hand building, they want the results like right then and there, right? So I'm like, well, a wooden rib will kind of even out those walls for you. It moves the clay around a bit, but it does make things very, very smooth. And it also showed me like these little divots right here where it's not the same height of clay, I guess, like there's some clay missing. And honestly, I just kind of scratch them up and toss a little ball of clay in there to smooth it out. There's nothing very like professional about how I go about my work. I do things people say you shouldn't, like sometimes I don't score and slip, and sometimes I put like really wet clay on really dry clay, and it works out. I don't know how it works out, but it works out. So when I kind of like answer some questions for some students, I'm like, you're taking a risk here, but you can try. Like, maybe don't listen to me, but it's worked out for me, so maybe it'll work out for you.
I always do the two response. I'm like, here's what the textbook says you should do.
Right.
What your instructor will tell you to do. But this is what I would do, and I don't suggest you do it, but it might work.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not looking, and your instructor's not looking.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, exactly. So I also kind of use the rib to pull out.
You didn't hear that.
No, right? Unofficially, right. Okay, so that's kind of how I start out, and I will want to just check that angle every now and then. I'm thinking I do want to go a little bit wider, so then I start to like pinch from the bottom again, and I'm having to flip this, sorry. How would I explain? I'm using my right hand, which would usually be my left, to hold the clay and support it, because right now it is pretty soft. But I'm pinching or like pushing outwards with left hand. Yes, exactly, compress. Very important, because also I'm bad at wedging well, like carrying enough to wedge well. And so, but again, I have not had anything explode. So, I want to compress like how Minnie was saying. And just get that edge out. Yeah, cool. So I'm gonna stop here, keep building on an extended version of this, and switch it back to Minnie.
I'm gonna pass these suckers around. I'm gonna start this way because they're the closest. They're just some of the little guys. Actually, can I steal the mouse? Thanks. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to steal this guy, before I do that though. So talking about pinch pots, to bounce off stuff in. This is a pinch pot. Technically, these are slabs, kind of. But the main body. Thank you. These are glove animals. Like I would make them all the time in the hospital. My mom taught my brother and I how to make them. Hi, sorry. One thing you should know about my artwork, I grew up in the hospital, so it's all quasi-medical. Because for me, when I think of joy and happiness in childhood, I think of medicine. And so like, also I do pill bottles, and like, I do a bunch of fun designs on them. Oh, most of the time I do like gown designs, but like this is blood. Anywho, once again, the tediousness. Anywho, once again, in the hospital, one of the things that is the reason why I like Little Buddies is my mom would like trick me into doing my PT by being like, let's go take a walk to the gift shop. I own every single animal figurine that any gift shop has ever had. Every child hospital I've been in, I think I've owned every single animal thing they had. I was there enough. I should have gotten a punch card and gotten a free one on the 10th. No, I put in my dues. But while we were seeing all these lovely ladies make a bunch of things, seriously, look how it's just popping up. Vika's just like magically creating things, wizardry over here. So I made a horse head. I made a little pinch pot ghost. So like it doesn't have to be big, magnificent things. This literally took me like less than a minute. But he, like Halloween, he's a fun little guy to have. Horse head took a little more time, but then I have like a tiny, teeny turtle, because your person said something about a turtle earlier, so I made a tiny turtle. And we have a little rhinoceros beetle, and a goat, because goats are awesome. But once again, all these things took 10-15 minutes. But with that, it's just, I just wanted to show you guys that there can be a plethora and a long list of types of little buddies. They don't all have to be real chonkers, although I do think he's adorable. And sometimes they're really simple with slight little designs on them. Like this has little lines and stuff. So this, and each of these I only used one tool each. So like this, I used the needle tool on my, well, I guess my hands count as one, and my hands. And then this is just my hands and my hands. And he was also the needle tool. But so on the, what do you do with a little buddy when you're done? Well, if you fire him, sometimes you make them into gifts, because these are the simplest, quickest gifts you can ever think of. But this used to be an ornament on a tree. He hung from his tail, and now he sits on one of our coffee tables at my parents' house. But so you can, I've made little charms out of them. And so if you put a little piece, if you leave a hole in the top, you can put a little loop wire and put a little epoxy or a little jewelry glue. And now you have a little tiny little charm. And when I mean tiny, you can make them like this size or smaller. My mom has a pair of earrings that are squirrels that I made. One is, and then she has one that's like a squirrel and then acorn. But those started, this is your mouse, yes.
I have a mouse.
You do, you also have a mouse, I forgot about that. Sorry, that's my mother. She's awesome. But so, and like I said, it leads to other things and all these different skills. A lot of these fine detailing skills is how I started being like, okay, but if I made that bigger, how would I make textures? Well, when I make something small, I use my finger to like make these lines to make it look kind of like ripply. So if I do that bigger, then I'll just use a bigger tool other than my fingernail and do that. And so that's what happens at this balloon when it's all like pinchy. And same thing happens when I'm carving, or even like there's in that box that's being passed around, I do have faces. Like I said, I make a bunch of faces. This guy's porcelain though. Those ones are stoneware. I'm not making them out of porcelain anymore because that was insane. Because when you don't have sculpting porcelain, it's a fun time to make things out of porcelain. And it also helps like reintroduce things like compressing, which is something that if sometimes when we're hurrying, we forget about the importance of making sure everything is pushed together, because clay sometimes need to remember to also be nice to each other. And if they don't, they just split farther apart when they go in the kiln. And so then you get these fractures and cracks and stuff. And then at the end, like I said, with this guy, I put a hole so he can have a little wire tail. And he's two glazes, an underglaze and a glaze. But most of the time, I just do a one dunk in whatever. Like the little, we have a trash glaze that's made of all of our glaze waste. And it's my favorite thing right now. It does what it wants, and I love that. But he's just literally, I put wax on, actually I didn't even wax him, I just remembered, yeah. No, I just dunked him, and then I wiped off the bottom, put him in the kiln. And now I have this little guy that will follow me forever. Is there any creatures that any of you want to know how to make that I can make for y'all right now? Sorry, I should have asked you to think about it. What?
Like a bird?
A bird? What kind of bird? Like a songbird or like a...
To cockatoo.
Toucan.
Oh my goodness, a toucan! I've never made a toucan. Sorry, I'm just thinking of their huge little beak. So with a toucan or even a cockatoo. So with birds, this is not a four-legged creature, but it does have 4 or 5 appendages, kind of like instead of 6 that you would for a four-legged creature. You have the beak, both the wings, and the feetsies. Sometimes I just ignore the feetsies, like this guy. I kind of did faux feet at the very front, and so this is how I did the owl's feet. So most of the time, unless I put little holes in the bottom to give him wire feet later, which I do have an army of crows that I made my senior year in college, because that was the little buddy of my choice that year. So many. And so just keep in mind, like you said, so there's 5 appendages, and with the toucan, that beak's gonna be large. But what, I'm trying to think of words. So I'm actually gonna start with the beak because I don't trust myself to start with anything else. So with birds, I do tend to do the head and the tail first, and then I worry about the wings. Huh?
What about the body?
He's just in the middle. He'll work itself out.
Okay.
Yeah. See, so like we're starting. This kind of looks like Hubert. Just starting to like make that little beak, and since toucan, his beak kind of forms straight into his head, and then since I haven't used.
Easier doing it without looking at the image.
Okay, but there's nothing wrong in looking at an image. I want that to be heard. There is nothing wrong with reference images. A lot of times, like in that box, I have an aardvark, and I made that because I walked into the studio, and I'm like, I am stressed, and so I looked through the studio, and I think it was an open studio, and so I'm like, studio mates, what shall I make? And one of our ladies, she's like, what does an aardvark look like? I'm like, and she's like, isn't it an anteater? I'm like, no, anteaters are different. And she's like, well, you should make an aardvark then. And so I had to look up a picture of what an aardvark was because I had no clue.
I don't know what is that.
It is a type of, like, it's a cousin of an anteater. So it's like a little mammal creature with big ears and a long snout. So there's nothing wrong with looking into a reference image, even with something as small as this, and especially with something as whatever big. It's almost like having a sketch. Do I think you should copy things one for one? No, because I think it's fun to explore. But also you learn so much in just doing a study.
Oh no, I'm impressed that you don't.
I know. I went on a tangent, sorry, because I get
reference.
really, so when I was in college, one of my jobs was mother henning the freshmen. So all the freshman artists that came in their first year, bright-eyed, not understanding that it's about to just be many nights of no sleep. Because they're like, an art major. We won't have that much homework. Lies. It is just tricking you into doing paper. So many papers, and so much math, and so much chemistry. And that's okay. So we're starting to pinch out that tail. And a lot of times they felt like if they looked at an image that they were cheating.
Oh.
That if they used a reference, then they weren't doing it the hard way. You don't have to do it the hard way. It's okay to do things the easier way. That, like I said, that doesn't mean you should make what someone else's idea and sell it, but it does mean that it's okay to make what someone else has and learn from how they've made it. Like I have a book of master studies that I've done of oil paintings and watercolors, and the amount of techniques I've learned from looking at that is awesome. And you can do the same thing by looking at nature, which is what I do with little buddies, is here's this creature, it has that texture on its fur, how in the world can I show that without giving too much? Because if you do too much detail on something that's tiny, you lose the plot. It goes away. So by kind of, maybe I can't remember what a toucan looks like. And I might have to look it up. You have to have a really long snout. Yeah. Yeah. I know, Mama.
Thanks, Mom.
That actually did help because I was forgetting what the beak looked like. I really hate that helped. Thanks, Mom. So now that we kind of have his little head and his little tail, I am making a chunker. I tend to like to make them kind of chunky because I think it intensifies the cuteness, and also, like I said, I have a tendency to overcomplicate things because, you know, I'm me.
Could these little bunnies be like those things that you put in your plant?
Yes, they are. And actually, my neighbor.
Well, like the ones that you put in your plant pots and it lets you know if you need to water your
I do slightly, but to do that, you might be able to make it out of earthenware, because then if the earthenware is dry, then you know that your plant's dry because of how the porous rate of earthenware. But I think there's another mechanic in a lot of those, and that's why a lot of them aren't handmade, is because you have to have another mechanic to kind of be able to tell.
You're meaning like another type of like clay or something?
Not clay, because some of them it's like almost like a hydrometer, and so it's like a liquid that rises when it's like, oh, there's moistures here. And so with that, you'd need an extra thing, and that's why a lot of times you just buy them in store. And so for the wings, I'm just kind of grabbing from where that head is and pushing down with my thumb right here.
Yep.
And I'm kind of just pushing it into a wing. And this guy, he's gonna be, I don't know if we're gonna make him inflate yet. Yeah, he gonna say hello. And so, and I'm kind of doing that with his wings out like this. So he's like, don't you love my sound effects? It's giving you the 4D experience.
All the senses.
Yeah, and so then we're gonna kind of push and push and push, and we get these little wings. And so toucans actually don't have that big wings, which is kind of strange now that I think of it. But we're gonna push, and now there's too much weight down here because we took from the sides and the top for the head, and so I'm just gonna push some of that weight that's in the tail and push it more into the middle. And once we kind of smoothed out, and also because this is scrap clay, this is getting dry. Just a little bit of water. It'll be fine. Once again, this is not something that's meant to be perfect or made for a market. You can sell them in a market. Done that. That's where all my crows went. But it's just something for you to get some accomplishment in your day. And so his little tail, and then so now, but he looks kind of plain. So how can we make this look a little more toucan-y? Well, toucans have.
I have to look it up because I was forgetting.
Yeah, so they have like pretty big eyes, or they look like big because they have like the fancy little feathers right next to it to mimic huge eyes, and they kind of have this line all the way through their beak, right before, because they use that end of their beak to crack stuff open. Don't ask. I also in the hospital, Animal Planet. The only thing that's on after hours because kids shows stop at a certain point. Animal Planet always on. Another reason, little buddies. They got big old nostrils. Like I said, I had nothing to do.
No. So many guys. Like I have to like come and like, is she making this out right now?
No. My poor mother can attest that she watched a lot of Animal Planet in her day. And so, and it kind of has, it has a three-toned beak. So I'm gonna kind of give a line to mimic where that color would be. Cause like I said, I'm not dunking this in more than one thing. That's too much effort. A little effort's good. But then also I wanna mimic all the, like how the feathers flare out on the tail. So I'm just gonna do these lines to kind of, to help your brain know, this is supposed to be fan feathers. Which is one reason why a lot of my things, if I do give texture for fur, it's only in a couple spots, almost like a children's illustration. You don't have to give the texture or the color to the entirety of something. As long as you give the illusion of it, our brains tend to be like, and we know that that's meant to be everywhere, and it makes sense, and so you don't kind of second guess it. Although if you add too much texture to something, you might look at it for a long time trying to figure out what it is. Like I said, especially for these itty bitty things. And now I want the little wings to also have some lines on it because I want people to know he can fly because he's just a fancy little guy. He should also have a name.
Bernard.
Bernard?
Bernard.
Nice. I see it. Yeah, he's a fancy man. Living it up. So I'm going to draw his little circles around his eyes because they do have that. And so all the lines. And then my last step, because I'm a detailed weirdo, kind of like if you look at the bottom of that bear, he has teeny tiny prop prints. So this guy, he's going to get little bird feet. And so we're going to do 2 lines for the 2 feet, but then we're just going to draw 3 little toes on each of those lines. And now he got faux feet. And now when he sits down, no one else knows he has feet, but you know he has feet. And that's part of the fun. And so now he just kind of sits and hangs out. And you, like I said, you can do this type of detailing, you can do it on a much smaller scale. And then when you get bigger, that's when you can start to play with extra textures, extra things like that, and more details. Any questions, comments, concerns? What?
I had a question, but you answered it already, so.
What was the question?
How far, I struggled with that, how far you put, how much detail, and you say to give the illusion of, you see, sometimes it's tricky.
Yeah, and also one fun thing about clay, as long as it's wet, you can take away detail, and that's always really nice, because sometimes we think something's going to be great, and then you look at it for a minute when it's actually in creation, you're like, never mind, that was too much. And then other times we've already fired it. Like this one's okay. I have a different one though so I do carvings into these, and I did all these little holes in the background, and it's too much. If you look at it plain, you can't tell there's anything there. And this is a ranunculus. The rose peony hybrid looking.
Oh,
yeah, that flower. But because this has less detail, I'm actually able to show where the flower is and where this leaf is. Where the other one, since there's already too much texture, I'm now going to have to go back in and make sure I redefine all those things with underglaze. So there is a way to pivot and still be like, okay, now we're going to make sure you can actually see all the flowers, and we're going to leave the background blank. But it's always okay to start with, like I said, you start simple and you slowly get more complex, because it is always easy to add more than to take away. And same thing with like when you start out with the pinch pot. Oh, those are my pill bottles. Yeah, these are my house blow down pill bottles. Sorry, I just noticed those were out there. Yeah, but you start out with a lot simpler things and you get more complex. Those are relatively simple. I tried some other complex things, didn't make sense. But then like I started layering them. And I could only do this because I knew what these patterns look like when they're on their own. And so I now can layer some of these on top of each other and with underglaze and then glaze over it, and you get that depth and complexity. And you can do the same thing with textures on clay forms and critters. Because like sometimes, like this horsey, he has hair that has little texture, right? And so when I make bigger, which I have made bigger horses, I'll add texture to the hair, but then I can go in after it's fired, and although it has the complexity of the texture of the hair, and you can see it and you know, I can then add underglaze in multiple colors, and then now all of a sudden it's not just a texture of a hair, it's then pushed farther. Like these lines on here, they were there, you couldn't really tell. And so then pushing that underglaze into all those creases gives your brain the illusion of higher shadows than there actually is. And like I said, those are all random skill sets you learn from doing things that are both small and then growing bigger, and then doing big things from little things.
So we were at the textures and how I was applying them, and I just realized that I just started using the brush like this, and it was good. it worked. So this is also another way. So I think when I was applying these, and I understood of how like there can be unlimited ways of applying glazes. It's just not spraying or dipping, or like it is like it's endless. So here, because it was thicker, I have some cracks, but then the cracks are going to become a little bigger, but it has some glaze in it. So I love these cracks because I ultimately want that thing to crack at certain areas, because at the end it's rusted. So from the application, when I was working with these forms, I started, this is one of the initial ones, and I was like, oh, this is similar to what I saw at Sushma's place. And I was like, oh,
clay or metal?
this is clay. This is all clay.
Okay.
No, she's just magic.
But then this was the first one, and I think it got overfired a little, and this was in the gas kiln, and when it came out, I was not very happy with it. Reason being, it was too glossy. Also, when I was analyzing the form, I was just making it, when something decays, it will not chop like this, right? Like it has to have that feeling of the decay. So I think when I was, and I made a lot of these. So when I was making all of these forms, I started realizing and going back and analyzing what all needs to be added in the form, not just the texture itself, to make it more rusted. So the second version became this. So there is some part which is eaten up here, there is some which is eaten up here, there is some which has textures here, and it has like some holes where maybe there is a worm which is living there. So started imagining all of these things to make sure that, oh, how the form decays in different layers. But it eventually happened. So I was at this when I started, but then slowly I started looking at these things in a better way. I know we don't have time, but when I was making these small test tiles, these became the forms which I grew up around, which were metal. So like a crooked hinge became a hook, and that's how, like, I was just on the road. We don't have a car, so I was always like, oh no, we don't have a car. But you know what, when I'm on the road, I'm picking up on these things so much that I have like a huge thing. So like all of this came up because I was on the road. And for the textures, I usually use a lot of things that I pick up from the road. So it's like bricks, some rotten things, I don't know what this is, some seeds, and they act really well when it comes to adding a depth to a form. So it's just a seed which I found, and the small indent that it creates gives that depth of thing which is eaten up over time. So that's how it slowly developed. And I also started thinking, oh, what if there is a cup which is found on a shipwreck, and what happens to it? So maybe there is like some shimmery things, and there are things which are like not exactly rust, but it's like a different kind of decay underwater, and that helped me use a lot of shells in it. I'm like, oh, so water, and what are the elements of water which help me add the elements in the surface itself, which feels that effect of time.
Can you pass around the cup though?
This one? Yeah. You can have this too. Oh yeah, okay. Yes, okay, coming back to the question, that's the last thing.
Yay.
Yes, so I fired this as, this got a little overfired. It was, I think it reached 6.5 because it was in the gas kiln. And a lot of times, all of these tests I did was at cone 6 because the glazes I was using was cone 6. But I realized I'm not making anything functional. And I want it to not be glossy. So I started firing all of them at different temperatures. So I fired them at cone 4 and it worked really good. So the one which is in your hand is cone 4. So it's the same thing, it's just like it's not matured and I don't want it to be matured. So just changing the temperature itself and under firing, in my case, helped.
Are you showing the final result?
Okay, no, that's the piece that Kathy was talking about.
Is the mirror a
is the
mirror, or
mirror.
is the mirror clay with glaze?
The mirror is actually glass.
Okay.
And then thanks to Alejandra, And I was like, I don't know what to do with it. She's like, you know what? Go to YouTube. You'll find a lot of videos how to convert a glass into a vintage mirror. So it's just like, so it's not ceramic. The mirror is not ceramic, but all of it around is ceramic. So yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're getting all of this texture just through the application of the glaze, or are you also?
So I'm layering a lot. Okay, I forgot. So I had like some underglaze on this, and so I have this effect, which is basically the paint which is ripped off.
Oh my God, that's how you.
So you have underglazes, so you layer them, and then you have red iron oxide, which gives another depth.
Yeah.
So it gives like a metal sheen on it. So when you apply as that on the top of it, so that works. So it's usually the mixtures of different glazes. So I have like a variety of glaze and slip mixes, and I layer them. So there is green, there is yellow, there is red, there is blue. There is a little purple, so that I can have these, and then underglaze on top.
I'm finishing my piece. It's falling apart because the clay is very wet. It needs to dry out for a little bit because it's not holding the shape, but this is what I do. I usually create,
It's pretty cool actually.
thank you, lots of pieces, and then I put it together. This was created from 3, and this one is created from 5. I can add 8 or 3 or 4, and then if I want to, I can continue to build them, one, another one. So this is it.
Do you always make a pattern first?
I always draw something, but it's not necessarily will be what I draw. But I start with some sort of form, but then eventually the work of the clay give me some sort of motion that I continue. But patterns, yes. If that piece that I show, yeah, that one I made a pattern and then I started to repeat it again and again. But this one was made also with the pattern. Some of my vessels are just hand built with the coils and slabs. I mix everything, as Stefania said. I don't think I follow the rules. Like, I use a lot of leftovers and then I do something else, and every time when I build it, I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to be, but I'll see if it's gonna survive in the kiln. And usually, not every time, but usually it survives. So, yes.
Makes me think of like a teapot, like a seed pod that falls on the ground. And that was like,
Yeah.
he's in motion.
Yeah.
And it is the fruit that.
Yeah, fruit. Seed pod is usually dry. Yeah, but fruit.
Do you have a preferred like glaze application once this is fired, or underglaze?
Now I'm working on it. As I was saying to my friend Anna, I have unsuccessful firings yet. Like, I don't like how they look, but I usually prefer something very simple because of the shape. I already have complicated, I would say, not complicated, but some sort of. Yeah, and if I'm gonna, but again, it's not necessarily, I can add layers of glaze and it's gonna look good, but at this moment I'm working on it, developing glazes and applications, and unsuccessful yet, but I still have time.
So when you're talking about developing your glazes, it's like you're creating your recipes?
I'm gonna start to mix my glazes. Now I was just mixing the glazes that I had, but now, like on Monday, I had this conversation with our instructor, so we kind of found some recipes on glazing. I'm gonna start to work on them.
Oh, okay, so you're not making
Like not
the
making like
recipe or
from the very beginning. No, I'm not there yet.
because that's how
Yeah, but I want to, but not there yet.
yeah, I want that too.
Even people who have been doing it for decades often still use a glaze as a jumping off point, like already a recipe, and then use
Yeah.
it as a
Yeah,
jumping
yeah,
off
yeah,
point.
totally.
Fluxes.
But even then, like the amount of chemistry that goes into glaze, like recipe making, is insane. Because even glaze recipes that we have that have been written down and people have used them for like a decade, they still need to be changed a little bit depending on your environment, depending
Yeah.
on
And again-
the age of materials you have and things like that. And so like
Yeah, what I meant mixing her own is using an existing recipe,
Yeah.
but then adjusting it
Yeah.
for what she wants to look like. Yeah.
I like that. Now it's getting some real interest.
yeah, I like the squishy. It makes me think of like a manowar. You know, the sea creature.
I was thinking sea fishers.
Or like a pierogi.
Yeah. That's what I was.
My brain goes two places: food or animal.
Never.
Almost.
Less than 10 hours.
Yeah, as I said, I usually take way more time to build it, but we have just 2 hours, so.
So just talking more about my glaze application, I use, okay, when I was in college, I used dip glazes, but I put them into a little squeeze bottle because I wanted to make all these patterns, and it made glazing so much easier because when you put into a squeeze bottle, it builds up that thickness. I don't need the layers of dipping or painting glazes on. And these are brushed glazes, but I put them into a squeeze bottle. They allow me to do like, you know, little patterns right here. This is with my squeeze bottle. Even this, I could have painted it on, but I wanted the thickness right away. I think a lot of my work is about cheating, about the time out of clay, I guess, I don't know. And I, you know, again, this is all squeeze bottle. I tend to draw them on beforehand, but I do go about looking through inspiration on my phone, some pictures I have saved, but also, like I said before, I like to combine those like talavera patterns with my own patterns almost. So I think that's why I have like a lot of stars and lots of swirls, but I try to keep them mixed in, intertwined with each other. And as for like carving away, I make it a little bit subtle on the body right here. As for the feet, obviously this is going to be very fragile, so I try to keep them tucked in if I can. Or like with that moth picture I had earlier, there was a lot of things sticking out, like the wings. Those were just slabs on there. The feet were very thick to support that body of work. I wanted the moth body to be upwards. So I'm not very good at planning beforehand. I typically don't sketch. That's another rule I kind of break. But I kind of just go about it if I can. I don't know. I jump straight into it. Pinch pots are super easy to build the forms that I'm thinking of. I kind of scroll through Pinterest and see different bugs, and I combined all these features of them. Like, I don't, maybe this is making me think of a rhinoceros beetle, not really, but I included it anyways because I wanted, you know, a bit of upwards for the eyesight. And let's see, what else?
Did you underglaze it before you biscuit?
No, I didn't. This is it at biscuit. It is Cinco Rojo. It's not finished. Another thing, the other clay that I used, like all those other bodies of work, was Black Mountain. That's cone 10. So I high fired that. So I am getting used to this new clay body, but I'm enjoying it. I also make some bug masks. Well, I call them masks, but they're. I'm trying to focus more on like seeing them as trophies almost, and I do pinch those out as well. I don't think I have any pictures.
Did you intend to make his belly look like a sugar skull?
Like a sugar skull? No,
No.
actually.
No.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Like on the. This one?
It looks like a sugar skull.
Oh, well, no, it wasn't my intention, but I think
Yeah, the
I
eyes.
think it always tends to come out that way. You know, when I do something, I don't think about it, but when I sit and think about it, I'm like, okay, well, obviously it came from my childhood, or it came from those roots I was talking about. So when I sit there and think about it, I'm like, yeah, I definitely see that. I got the eyes right there, right?
Yeah, and your hand is on his mouth, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look. Oh my God. No, it wasn't my intention. No, yeah,
It's
but
almost like a god. I thought it was.
Yeah, sugar skull thing.
Yeah.
Sugar bug.
Sugar bug. That's cute. I like it. But yeah. I also, I think Chance showed earlier, make a little mosaic, Raku fired Black Mountain clay. And just recently, what came out of the Rakuten with the residents is a little isopod.
Oh.
I wish I had it here physically. I'm sorry, but that came out real cute. And yeah, I just like to make different bugs. I like to call them all my bugs. I haven't named them all yet, but they're bugs and they're mine. So yeah, thank you.